What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Patros podcast. My name is Allan. This is Jeff, and this is a ministry of Man Up, where we are embracing healthy masculinity. Jeff, why are we so cozy today?
Well, we're cozy. First of all, I'm cozy on the top of my head.
Because he's repping the squad.
Because I'm repping my team, and on the day that this airs, we will be national champions.
Hopefully it doesn't age.
Gosh, this better age.
Hey, I'm rooting
this
for
better
it to
age well.
I'm rooting for it. Just the guys on the team are awesome. So
for those of you who don't know, Patros is a ministry of Man Up that is a discipleship tool, and we had the pleasure and opportunity of creating what we called the Counter Kingdom series with several of the current and former Ohio State football Buckeyes. And what's great is that even like people who don't like the Buckeyes with a passion
love watching
when they meet those boys, they're men. They're men. When they meet those young men, they're just like, dang,
I want to root for them.
These guys are the real deal. Our COO at Man Up is just completely conflicted.
You know, she's with the U. She actually went there.
And she is like, I don't want to have to cheer for them.
But I have to.
But yeah, we're cozy today. First of all, before we tell them why we're cozy, we got to check in. We got to check in on the 40-day challenge because we started something, we stopped something, and then we have said we're going to do 10 minutes of vigorous exercise. Mm-hmm. Allan, how you doing?
Well, my legs are hurting. My glutes are hurting. Everything below the belt is hurting.
Okay.
Because your boy's been working out.
Okay.
I haven't.
You've been getting the 10 minutes of vigorous exercise?
My beats per minute haven't probably reached where I want them to, but I've also understood that if I push myself a little too hard, I'm going to get injured. Oh. So
You've gone into old man syndrome. That's what
Not old man. I'm trying to get back, but I know sometimes what I do is I start pushing myself too hard, and then I end up getting injured, and then I go backwards. So I'm ramping up.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm doing good on that.
I'm ramping down. Because I'm just old.
The food's solid. Everything's good on that. Been killing it with that. And then the memory verses are tough.
Oh, come on.
But I just talked to...
Well, your stop was to stop eating...
Stop eating, like...
Processed,
like bread, stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh.
Bread,
but you can't eat sourdough
pasta.
bread?
I want to do sourdough bread.
Could you eat like fresh sourdough?
Yeah. Your friend, got to hit her up.
Did you?
I haven't yet because I've part of me wants to just stay committed to no bread just for the psychological win, and then after the 40 days I'll dive
You're
into
gonna
bread.
Love the sourdough.
Yeah, no, I love sourdough.
Hey, listen, if Liza gets it started again, I'll give you a starter kit.
Ooh, no, I won't be able to manage it.
Okay,
let's just be honest.
You just want to buy it.
Yeah.
Okay, all good.
Alexis will kill me because she knows I can't manage it, and then I'll just.
And I'll be mad because you wasted my starter kit.
Yep.
Okay.
How you doing?
So I stopped coffee, and this is not coffee in here. This is a chai tea, which is not doing it for me, but it's there.
You should smell coffee while you drink it.
Well, I go into the coffee shop to smell the coffee. We did a marriage refresh last weekend, and so we were staying in this downtown place. It was a cool place. It was like... I don't think maybe 4 or 5 bedrooms, and it had a cold plunge on the top floor. It had a sauna. It had like infrared. It was like right near Armature Works.
You guys did a marriage refresh?
Yeah, it was like a marriage.
The one that's like the annual one?
Yeah.
I didn't know it happened again.
Well, it wasn't. It was for.
It wasn't the big one.
Because they just couldn't they didn't have the bandwidth. So just just a couple of us that did it.
Dang.
But anyway,
screw the rest of our marriages.
Well, the rest of you can hook on next year. This year will be a terrible year for marriage for you, and you can refresh in 26. Okay. Oh man! But anyway, so I was there. Why did I start telling that story?
How are you doing your challenge?
Oh yeah. So one of the gals is a coffee connoisseur.
Oh,
like she brought all her French press stuff, and she brought all her frothing materials, and I'm like, you are Satan to me, like right now. What are you doing? And she's just like, ha, 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 like cackling.
Pouring,
like here,
little
smell this.
cappuccino in front of you.
Anyway, so but I haven't done that. My start was the language, and bro. So let me tell you this. So I started babbling.
Oh yeah, Spanish.
Yeah, Espanol.
Oh, Espanol.
I learned a word. I am learning on it. If I see it and hear it, I'm good. But if I just listen to it, it's like hard, man.
¿Por qué?
Because it's muy rápido, and I'm like, slow down so I can figure out what verb you just conjugated. It's hard for me to like. But also, can I tell you about the Babbel app? You know what? I'm not happy. Tell me if I should not be happy about this.
You're using an app that's titled after the place where God used for confusing people with language.
to make me more confused.
The whole purpose of Babbel, yeah.
So tell me if I shouldn't be upset about this. They first of all, every like conversation they try to teach you about is like going to the bar. So like I know how to like.
Oh, because they're expecting you to be.
Beber and
comprar cerveza.
Yeah, cerveza and like all of these words. Do you want to get a drink? Do you want to get a wine? I'm like, why? Do you think I'm an alcoholic? Yeah. And then like the examples that they're using are like Tim and his fiance Juan are like, and I'm like, why are you pushing this on me? They got the vibe from you, Jeff. But like it's obviously the software. Like, why do they have to push that on me?
Did they put you have to put like how old you are? All
maybe
that stuff?
I don't know. They probably just looked at my outfits and like that guy's definitely no.
So what are we diving into
anyway,
today?
Enough of that. Maybe we'll ask our guests if I should be upset about that. And I'm not even upset about it, but I'm like, why are you pushing me to this end? Like, why does it have to be
acting so like they can push you to that end.
Oh man!
And we're already off the
wrong. We're on the wrong track.
So we got a couple of we're in this frame because we got a couple of special guests that we might also ask how the Man Up Challenge is doing.
Yeah, we can do that. We're gonna bring in our friends Vijay and Taylor now, and guys, we are right in the middle of a series that we're doing in the month of January. January is National Mentoring Month, and so we're in the middle of a series where we're talking about what it means to be a patros, and we're in particular looking at the dependency system. We're looking at areas where the Florida fatherhood bill that was passed a couple of years ago has made an impact. And so far we've had on a judge, which of course you know, Vijay, because you're the one who helped connect us and get him on the show, Judge Manning. Last week we had Patrick and Pat, who are fatherhood experts. These folks have been doing it for a decades. Long time. And so they are with the Global Partners for Fatherhood or something. Anyway, amazing. We'll get the actual name. And so they're kind of coming at it from a system standpoint. You guys are in the system standpoint as fatherhood engagement specialists.
For fathers and families. That's
what is it?
It was Global Partners for Fathers and Families.
Global Partners for Fathers and Families. So if you're Googling it at home, there you go. And you guys serve in a unique role with Man Up as the fatherhood engagement specialist. So now, by law, every judicial circuit in the state has to have one of these. And so we're blessed in Circuit 6 and Circuit 13. Yes.
I didn't know. By law?
Yeah, by law. That's what those are. Yeah.
We enter it out.
We're playing. We don't play.
Who
we kicked that
was
door
that?
wide open.
That was because of the House bill? Or was that okay?
That was one of the effects of the House bill, and so you guys are on the front lines. And so in this series, which we're hoping that other states will be able to watch, nonprofits from other states will be able to watch, just to hear like, hey, what does this look like? How's it going? What are the challenges, etc. So we're excited to talk to you guys about that. All that to say, welcome to the Patros Podcast.
I'm excited to be here. And this is the only Bucks that matter to me right here.
Oh, man.
Just got to say that.
Bienvenidos.
Bienvenidos.
I'm just glad you didn't introduce us as Juan and Tim. So.
Fair enough.
So our viewers know. Maybe we start. Well, actually, first off, how's the 40-day challenge going?
It's going great for me. Taylor, you just got a little bit of
Rocking, baby, rocking.
Yeah, it's rocking.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Get a little closer.
Oh, yeah.
So we picked you up.
And then you guys have already met Taylor before, plenty of times. Vijay.
I'm a rookie
Can
here.
you do your spiel on who is Vijay?
Who is Vijay? Yes, so Vijay Chandra. I was actually in auto insurance before this whole field, before this whole organization. I knew nothing about this. Yes, 13 years.
Wow.
13 years. And then I figured, like, hey, this is not something that's purpose driven for me. This is not something I feel like is my calling. And I found Man Up, and I found them on Indeed, nonprofit. I'm like, I want to be the hands and feet of Jesus, right? So how can I do that in a career aspect? Found Man Up, and the rest is history. I mean, now I'm like in a role that I feel like it's full circle for me. I grew up without a dad. Adopted myself, so I know what it is to have an absent father, but I also know the importance of having strong pillars in the community.
Wow.
So for me, it just hits home. I'm able to relate. I'm able to have experiences that I could, express, and the circumstances that these fathers are going through. Obviously, not all the same, but I'm in that world. And I would argue to say that we're in the system, not of the system. So just like we're in the world, not of the world. Yeah, I know you mentioned that earlier, Jeff.
Love that.
Yeah.
And I would like to say that while you feel like you found Man Up feels like it found you.
Thank you, Jesus.
Oh, you're the one. And you're the one.
Also,
We're all the one.
there's a fight internally about who gets to take credit for you.
That's ongoing.
Because Stephanie seems to think that, she can take the credit, even though I was the one that said, no, I think we should look outside of the state of Florida. Anyways.
Oh, yeah, I forgot you moved.
Yeah, because he was up in
Yeah.
Michigan.
No way.
Originally
I
from
forgot
Tampa Bay.
about that.
Originally from Tampa Bay,
Tampa Bay,
so I brought the
Florida,
Bucks.
Yeah, but you brought the whole fam down.
Yeah, we went to Lansing, Michigan for
Which
about
is
a year
good,
and a half.
'cause it would have been bad if you left your kids.
Wow.
I did like a pastoral residency up there. Shout out to my wife, almost 11 years now. We're married. Two
Let's go.
boys, Arlo and Atlas, 7-year-old and 4-year-old, keep me on my toes, keep me busy. It's my first ministry there. Love them to death. Yeah.
Awesome.
Have you ever got Taylor's story?
I don't know.
Oh,
Taylor?
we don't have time for all that. Oh, yeah, no. So
Give us,
Give
give
us
your
the abbreviated.
the
abbreviated version.
elevator.
Yeah. So oldest is
Make sure
yeah.
you're speaking into that mic.
Speaking into the mic,
Yeah.
not away from the mic. No, so real quick story. I guess I'm the oldest of 6. Divided family. My mom and dad got divorced when I was 4. So that was a thing for a long time. Lived with my dad and his wife for a few years. Then got old enough to say I don't want to be here. Left. Went to my mom, and then the absentee dad for about a decade. Never talked to him for a minute after that. So spent most of my high school, junior high years without him. Had a close friend die of a gunshot wound. Called my dad, said I need to get out of here. He came and picked me up the next day.
Wow.
So got reconnected with my father at 21. Spent a couple years with him. Christ found me, saved me. 9 months, and then 9 months later, he passed away. So he died I got saved in February of 2009. Dad died in November. Wow. So it was a gift to come back and reconnect, but it was more of a friendly connection than it was a fatherly connection. Sure. And then ever since then, I've just been pursuing Christ in ministry, trying to figure out how to do that in a way that honors God, but also is a way to reach into lives of other people who have a lack of a mentor or fatherly figure or any type of person in their life who can speak into them. I was around a lot of people in high school, in hindsight, that said they were Christian but never talked about it.
Yeah.
So one of those things, as a youth pastor and a youth leader, I challenge all of my kids, which was like, don't be the kid who has the gospel in their grasp and can't give it to somebody, because it changes people's lives, and you don't know that until you say it out loud to somebody. So the gospel said, like, that's what Romans says, like, you cannot come to Christ until you hear about Christ. So it was a whole thing. So, and then God did some crazy things in my life. I ended up here in 2017, volunteered with Man Up in 2019, got on payroll in 2023, and then it's been here ever since. So that's the quick and short of it. Yeah.
Well, and if you recognize Taylor's face, he's been on a couple of times before because he is our resident theologian.
I did shave, so it's a little different now.
Dang, that's his 5 o'clock shadow.
Dang, bro, and it's only 12.
It ain't even 12. Yeah,
Good
it's
beard
bad.
oil.
It's bad. Yeah, that is the key.
Yes.
Beard oil is the key.
You can't.
Anointed.
Yeah, you can't be
Anointed
reformed
beard oil.
and not have a beard, right?
Yeah.
Well, listen, we're really excited to have you guys on, and I think for those listening, what you can expect today is just to hear what is the child welfare system like, because you're talking to guys who are boots on the ground. If you have never thought about what happens when a child is removed from their home, like this is going to open your eyes a bit. And so and then from a father's perspective, because it's not just then the child welfare, it's then looking into what is the father's perspective in the child welfare system. So maybe Vijay, I'll start with you. Talk a little bit about let's talk a little bit about the system. Like, can you just kind of help the listener understand what does happen? You're on a lot of these hearings. You were just on one earlier.
Oh, yeah.
You're on a lot of these hearings, but what actually happens when a kid comes into care? Why does a kid come into care? What does that look like? What's that process?
Yeah, wow, the system. You can unpack that for a few hours. I would say the system, they call it the system of care, foster care system, the dependency system. That's what we know it as. The system of care, there's so many entities. We have the judge, we have attorneys, we have other providers from like substance abuse programs, we have counselors, we have guardian ad litem, which is child advocate, right? But we never really had a father advocate. So we see the system of care, and a lot of times you think care, you think compassion, you think empathy. What I've noticed from being in this work, in this field, that fathers don't see that. So when you look at this system, you would want to like idealize that, oh, this is something that's for me. Like I might have made a mistake, but now I have something to right my wrongs, and these people are going to help me out. I think from the father's standpoint, they're so overlooked, they're neglected. They don't feel like they have the resources. They don't feel like they have the representation like a mother would or a female would in the court systems. And unfortunately, that coincides to society as well, I feel like. So we have these fathers that feel undervalued, that feel like they don't have self-worth, coming into this system of care, and they already have like they're on guard, like they have their walls up. And what we want to do is the opposite of that. We want to disrupt the system. We're like the new kids on the block, basically. Saying, hey, you actually are matter. You do matter. You are valued. You are loved. You belong. You have a purpose. And even though the system of care isn't showing that, if we can put our foot in the door and kind of leave a good residue, I think that's transformation can just happen from that. And we've already seen that with Judge Manning. As you can see, he's a big proponent. Judge Campbell as well. Shout out to Judge Campbell and the 13th Circuit as well. But other entities are now seeing this, and it's growing on them. And it's not necessarily just a wildfire. It really is a mission-minded organization with Man Up, and that's I wholeheartedly back it, and I couldn't ask for anything else in terms of where the position I'm at right now, and to be able to be on the forefront and be in the trenches with these fathers, and to let them know, hey, you actually do have a chance, and we're right here with you, backing you.
So what are the components of the system? You mentioned the different kind of people that are involved, but essentially you have caseworkers who like let's go back from the beginning, because a report is made, right, on the welfare of a child. So the welfare of a child is in question. Someone can call the hotline. Someone calls the hotline. That child then is investigated by a child protective investigator. It used to be the sheriff's office in our area. Now it's with the Department of Children and Family. So now it's with the state, and every state varies, state to state. Most of the time it is the departments or child welfare department or agency that will come out and do that. One of the reasons that we had such a high removal rate was because the sheriff's office was doing it. And to the defense of the sheriff's office, what are you there to do?
Protect
and serve.
And you're not necessarily trained specifically for this demographic. You're trained generally for civilians protection. So yeah, it's just different.
And we had a case here several years back, which was the event that necessitated this, where a child was taken and then was given back, and the father ultimately threw her off the Skyway bridge. And she died. And so ever since then, of course, what do? We
panic.
We overreact.
Yeah.
And but I say overreact. You react. You're like, man, not on my watch.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're a police officer and you're going out to investigate this, hey, we got a call. The child looks like they're, they got some bruises on their face or whatever. Like now they could have just fell down the stairs, and it could have been a very, accidental thing. But what are you going to think?
But you don't know.
No.
You don't know, and you're trying to investigate. You're going to
make the best decision with the information that you have, and sometimes hindsight, you realize we didn't have all the information, so we made the wrong decision.
Right.
Or maybe just the best decision at the time.
Well, and I think the thing that was going on is that the default was to remove. So instead of it being, hey, let's evaluate the situation
and how to support and how to.
The default was, we're going to take this kid out unless you give us really good reason why we shouldn't. So the numbers in our area got out of
Obscene,
control. And in the Tampa Bay area, for several years, I don't know that we're there now. We probably still are. I would have to check the latest numbers. But I would say for a decade, we were the leader
We were.
in children being removed.
And Pinellas was up there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Kind of
there was over 6,000 kids in the
Yeah.
Tampa Bay area that were in the system of care, far exceeding. We had more kids in care in the Tampa Bay area than did Miami, Jacksonville, and Orlando combined.
Yeah.
Which is wild
crazy
to think about.
Yeah.
So a kid comes in, let's say, or the DCF officer goes out and now believes that, this is a reason why we would remove. What would be some of those reasons that they would remove?
Abandonment, neglect,
Drug use,
substance
malnourished,
abuse.
any kind of a report that was domestic violence related or anything like that could endanger the child in any way.
Those are the most common too. Is the DV, unfortunately, domestic
DV
violence.
is the highest one.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of my dads have been affected by DV or drug abuse is usually the highest ones I've gotten. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say drug abuse is the number one reason overall that kids are put into care. So if you think about it, if your parents are doing drugs, they're probably not attentive.
No.
And so it's actually more of a neglect situation, right? You're on drugs, you are neglecting the needs of that child.
Yeah.
So a kid comes into care for whatever that reason is. They have some kind of what they call a shelter hearing, which is going to determine, hey, where are we going to put this kid immediately? And for you listening, like, if you think about it, it's kind of wild, right? Like,
So sad.
What this kid that comes into care, they could be 6 months, they could be 2 years, they could be
13.
10, 13, whatever.
You have no decision over your own.
And you're just coming
your
in, and a lot of times you've got the clothes on your back and maybe a backpack. You've seen
Or a trash bag.
Like you don't have anything. You've got about 10 minutes to grab what you think. So you're grabbing a couple pair of clothes and a lot of times not even a toothbrush, right? And so now where does that child go? Well, there's a hearing to decide where that is. And that's why we need foster parents desperately, because foster parent, but they'll immediately try to find some kind of caregiver of kin, right? Whether it's a grandma, auntie,
That's the ideal situation.
right? Something of that nature. But oftentimes they're not looking for dad, right?
Yeah.
Can you guys think of situations where dad was, would have wanted to be a part of that, but actually wasn't? So I guess what I'm getting at is sometimes we think that the child is removed because dad did something, but sometimes it's not the case. Sometimes the child is living with the mom and her boyfriend at the time or other partner, and dad is somewhere else.
Yeah.
And kid is brought into care, and sometimes that dad is not even notified.
Yeah, I've had a handful of cases that were for non-offending fathers. So a non-offending father is someone who is a father of the child but did not do anything to make them a part of the case plan or the removal. But there are times when that father is not found or contacted within sometimes 3, 6, 9 months, depending on the situation, and it's like you just don't know. One of the fathers I worked with recently, I was on a case planning conference with. He's in Polk County, wasn't involved with with the mom of the child for almost 8 to 10 years just because of her whole situation. drug abuse, bad things. Like, he left her, and he had to leave the kid with her. There was just no other way around it. And then she got the kid removed from her custody, and he got a call 6 months later saying, "Hey, we have your daughter, this, that, and the other." And he's like, "Well, I would love her to be here." And we'll say, "Well, we can't just give her to you." So he had to prove himself worthy of having his daughter in his home.
So almost guilty until proven innocent.
It's guilty to proven innocent as opposed to innocent to proven guilty. But also, this man had a job, owned his home, had a fiance, had two other kids with him, wasn't involved with the mother. Yeah. So it turned out to be a great situation in the end, because she did end up going to live with him, and he's not adopting her. That's not really what it is, but like, he's with her now. Like, they're with him now.
He's legally her caregiver.
He's legally her caregiver now. But it took almost 9 to 12 months for this to work out, even though you were like, "Oh, this is easy. He's got all these things," but he had to prove he had a home, he had an income, and he had to do case plan tasks, even though he wasn't an offending father.
So part of my ignorance, but I'd have a question, like, because I can almost sympathize with that thought process.
Mm-hmm.
If, like, all right, I come across a child, mom is an offender, and then dad is nowhere to be found, but when we do find dad, he's like, "Yeah, I'll take her," but did you know what was happening to, you know what I'm saying? Like, so you're naturally, if you're like, last thing I want is this child goes to dad, and we didn't check all of our P's and Q's and everything like that, and next thing you know, child ends up back with mom, or you know what I'm saying?
I think that's where the due diligence comes in on their end.
So it's not necessarily guilty until proven innocent, but we just want to prove that you are fit to take the child.
And that's why they put formalities in place. Like, a lot of these dads already have other kids, but it's kind of degrading to them to, like, take a parenting class as part of their case plan test, when they already are parenting.
Yeah.
So it's
they just don't have a relationship or bond with them.
They have to basically put themselves in the other person's shoe and say, if you came across a child and someone's just like, "Yeah, that's my kid," you'd want to be careful.
The bond isn't there with that kid yet. So I think that's why they're kind of looking from that.
And the biggest thing is usually, like, you have to do visitations like everybody else. It's like, "Hey, we're not just going to hand you the kid because you say, like, there might be a test involved where you prove that you are the father of the child, this, that, and the other." But also, it's like there's no bond made, like you were saying. Like, they want to see a bond made. So there's more visitations than anything else, and seeing how this works out, and hopefully the bond happens quickly and it just moves fast. And those cases move quicker. They do move quicker, but, like, the hardest part usually is finding out where the dad is.
So does that
and
happen,
if he even wants to be involved.
Does that happen because, like, how long was the child removed from mom, right? Like, let's say removal happens the day of, and then they're like, "Where's dad?" "Oh, dad's right here." "Oh, okay, go to dad."
Yeah, it's quick. Yeah.
Is that faster versus like, child's been in the system, we've been looking for dad, it's 6 months in, now we find dad? Will that take longer?
I don't think it would take longer. It's just a matter of, like, no matter how long it takes to find dad, they still check their P's and Q's no matter what. They're going to go through their process because
they have to protect themselves.
They're protecting the child. They're in their mindset, this system's in place to protect the child. Like, and so as long as they have that in front of them, it's like, I believe what you say, but there are boxes to check before we do this.
So have you guys seen where, I mean, maybe not because you're specifically working with fathers that are in that situation, but like the reverse, right? So dad loses kids, mom comes around. Does mom have to also go through that same process?
Not as many hurdles.
Not as many hurdles.
No. And I actually personally have not even seen that scenario.
That situation.
Yet. I mean, I'm sure they're out there. But they wouldn't have as many hurdles jumped through.
No way.
For example, like a substance abuse treatment, like urine screenings, right? I've had a father that was non-offending, probably about a good 12 months, 13 months maybe, of testing negative. And I heard of another case where a mother tested negative for about a month, and they were like, "Okay, you no longer have to urine screen."
No way.
Yeah, straight up. Like, that's wild to me.
Yeah,
well, it just shows the
discrepancy.
The discrepancy, the viewpoint that we have, like the bias that we have against men in this situation. And I would say, like, a lot of that is probably deserved, right? I mean, if you look at, we talk about fatherlessness and the impacts of fatherlessness. We would not have fatherlessness if there were fathers. Like, we're not talking about a motherless society. We're talking about a fatherless one. So clearly, I think there's some due diligence that should take place. And for a non-offending father, that's a situation where there should be some kind of fast track. You know,
Well, the problem is too. I think the system's elevated. Maybe even culture has elevated a maternal need of a child over the paternal need, because like, oh, they need mom to care for them and comfort them and all those things, and we would agree with that. But also, like, you being that you elevated that, you've now taken away that need for the paternal need and the value of it. And last 20 to 30 years, we see that need is actually equal, if not higher, than the maternal need. Like, so it's like they've overcorrected to a point where they need to now, and now we're seeing in Florida that there is a correction that is taking place, but it's a slow correction.
I think I was watching an expert discuss this, where I think it was a TED Talk. I'll put the link in the description. I'll give it to Maggie to put in, but where the statistics of children raised by a single father are the same parallel to children raised by both parents in the home.
It is now,
So I could see that, and that society has devalued the fact that like fathers matter, and the father's presence in the home, a healthy father, is necessary. Yeah.
Well, that's right. I think it's what's remarkable about the Florida legislation, which is, I mean, dumping $70 million into promoting fatherhood every year. I mean, now, not every state out there. I mean, I think Florida's government's larger than most nations. So between us, New York, and California, like we all are more than, our
is
budgets
Texas
are
up
more
there
than.
too?
Yeah, I'm sure. But anyway, the big states.
They're their own country.
They're their own country, essentially.
They want to be.
But I think when we look at not every state's going to be able to dump $70 million into fatherhood initiatives, but the fact that we are elevating the conversation, we are raising the optic around the conversation. Some of the things that Florida is doing is there's a family first. Is running a campaign about father. I think they called it Father First.
Father First, yeah.
And so you, like, if you're living in the state of Florida, you're probably seeing those ads, in your Instagram feed or your YouTube feed or whatever. They did the fatherhood legislation, so they had the fatherhood engagement specialist. They also allowed, nonprofits to apply for grants that are dealing with fathers, and so that's one of the things that we also do is try to get upstream of these issues so that those kids are not coming into the system of care in the first place. So what I would like to know is, and I know you guys are, dealing with those dads who are in the system, but I think you can speak to this as well. What are those reasons? I know we said neglect and abandonment and drugs and all of that, but as you're dealing with fathers who are really wanting to do the right thing,
like the root.
What are the barriers? What are the barriers that you're seeing? Some of it can be like really pragmatic and practical, but do you see deeper barriers
as you
too?
get to know the man? That's good.
Yeah, I would say there's a great Matt Chandler quote that I just listened to a sermon yesterday. It was about a few weeks ago, I would say, where it's talking about passivity. So passivity is a common denominator where masculinity is absent. And I think we have a culture, unfortunately, in certain demographics too, especially, where it's just passive, it's stagnant, it's complacent. And I think that is something that we already have the meat of what a man is, right? Or the structure, and we want to bring the meat around that, in terms of building them up as a man first, so then that carries into them being a father and them being a husband if they want to pursue that, of course. So we have to get back to that. We have to get back to the basics. And I think that's where the trauma comes from too. Like their inner child, like where did they actually start with their trauma? Was that something that generational that was passed on before as well? Yeah. So that in itself in the culture and what men are constantly looked at is like, oh, they're a deadbeat or they're not going to step up. Yeah. This is just who they are. These kind of like stigmas have like been attached to them. So it's kind of like we have to get them out of this shell of who they are and build them up.
So identity.
Correct. It goes back to identity. Shout out to Joe.
Joe is a staff member who's constantly bringing us back to identity, which is
where we need to be.
Which is where we need to be, and that's exactly right. So you brought up a couple different things there. You brought up the generational piece of it. You brought up the culture piece of it. How many of your dads would you say, I'd like to know from both of you guys, how many of your dads grew up without a dad, would you say, percentage-wise, and what are the impacts that you're seeing from that? Do you have any data around that or stories?
Man, I would say most. I mean, I have not had one encouraging conversation with a dad I work with about their father.
Wow.
Now, whether that means they were absent or they were there and not around or whatever.
Really there.
And then 85% of my fathers have been addicted to a drug, which has led to incarceration.
Wow.
I would say most of my fathers are in that demographic of dad. So whether that's they got involved with the wrong people at the wrong time, or they just were in a bad situation, or they were pushed that way because of their surroundings, and that's what they become because of that. So I would say like it's definitely a generational thing that's been happening probably since the 60s or 70s, ever since the whole boomer generation and stuff like that. Like it's been a constant fight that we've just neglected. So we see, and now we're fighting against the whole consequences of that. We just kind of laid down our swords and have allowed the enemy to just take over in that way. And most of my fathers did not have a father in the home, and because of it have searched for other ways to feel wanted and desired, and have someone in their life that would do that. And unfortunately, it's become you usually find those in the wrong place in the wrong time, unless you find a good church, and most people don't go that way on purpose.
For sure.
So, yeah.
You use literally the stat, which is we've brought up a bunch, about 85%. If you go to the prison, 85 out of 100 will have not had a present father in their life, and so you're literally quoting that same stat among your dads.
Yeah, I was going to say, to your point, I have a little bit larger of a sample to pull from, just because of me being like last year and a half working in this field. So I would say there's a handful that I have that have a dad in their home, or had a dad in their household, but he was present physically, but not present emotionally, not present spiritually, and not present mentally. To provide that type of nurturing aspect that fathers can give and do give. It's just, I think for me, that's something that is overlooked, because there are great fathers that actually do nurture, but they're just not known to be nurturers.
For sure.
Like a woman or a female or a mother
it's
would.
It's a different style of nurturing.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Like how men engage in nurturing is just different than how women do, but men nonetheless are tasked to still be responsible for that, right? Yeah. Which is interesting that 85 out of 100 didn't have a present father, but that doesn't mean that other 15% had a good present
stability
father.
too.
It's a different kind of,
So as they're dealing with their case plan, how do they get their kids back, I guess is the question. Like what do they have to do to be able to either, like for some of them, they were, for whatever reason, they were disenfranchised, or they were separated, and now they're like, hey, I absolutely will, because but some of them, they were the cause, they were the reason, and it was, whether it was drugs or whatever the case. How do they prove to the state, which, by the way, the state of Florida, and I'm sure a similar law exists elsewhere, you're supposed to achieve permanency for the child within 12 months.
Yes, that's the
And
plan.
one of the issues that we have is when you don't have enough foster parents, you have so many kids coming into care, and you don't have enough foster parents, they end up bouncing from house to house to house, and you have all of this instability, so that the average child who comes into the system is going to have 8 different caregivers. And when you think about just the trauma that produces, and the instability that produces, we have to, and we're recognizing that we have to get these kids a permanent solution sooner than later. The law says 12 months.
It never happened.
It rarely happens. The average is 18 months in the state. So, what does that father actually have to do so that in that 12-month time frame they can get their children back? What do they have to prove?
It's case by case, but majority of the time it's stable income, stable housing, parenting classes. Then you have the one-offs, which are a lot of one-offs, unfortunately. In our case, is the DV. You got to do like a psychological eval, mental eval, depending on if they had like a mental episode, mental breakdown of losing their kids. What else would it be?
A lot of, like, for me, like I said, a lot of mine are drug-based court.
Substance
So
abuse,
like UAs, which is like a urine analysis, random number. It could be up to 5 times clean every time, or 3, depending on the parent, depending on what it is. But usually you have to be clean for 5 tests in a row. They're random. The income and the housing is always a big one. Then there's a battery intervention classes, like, so if you're in
Anger
a
management.
DV case, anger management, but there's like, and then like they have, and then the other thing is like when you do those psychological analyses and all those things, it even says in the case plan that could add more case plan tasks to your case plan based on those responses. And those, you can have an analysis in January but not have the actual, or you can have the thing, you can have your meeting in January but not have the analysis done till March, and then in March you have a review and say, oh, because of what this doctor said, we're actually going to add these case plan tasks as well. So yeah,
and the key part to that too with Taylor is they want to see behavior modification. So everything's formality with them, whereas I feel like us, we're trying to see behavior transformation. You know, it's a heart change for us, because anybody can go through a 29-week DV class.
You could play a role.
You can play the role. You can get all the answers. You could even participate and engage.
You change the man.
But are you really changing yourself? You know, is that seeing the fruit? You know,
what's the process like? Because I can imagine not all these dads are on the birth certificate, or there's a boyfriend that's on the birth certificate that isn't dad. Like, how does he fight for his child if he technically legally doesn't have rights?
There's a court order blood test. Sometimes you can court order blood tests. Paternity tests. But that's another fight entirely. Like, you can like if he wouldn't even hear if he's not on the birth certificate, they're not looking for him.
Like,
so he has to know.
If he passes a blood, like if he knows my child is out there, boyfriend's on the birth certificate, and I know that, but I want my child, and he requests a blood test. Will they give it to him?
It has to be court ordered.
It has to be court ordered. So you can be in court and sit there and wait for your turn.
Request it at court. Okay.
Or hire
at
an
his
attorney to do
expense.
so. At his expense, probably too.
So that not anybody's coming out the woodworks.
Well, that's what I'm saying. A lot of the prohibitive nature of this whole system is like how much money you got. To be able to file. Now, Taylor, you had brought up an interesting one. That you just had. Explain that case.
So I'm working a case right now with a gentleman who's been working in his program for 18 months. Like, the child was removed at birth. The mother's sister came down to be the caregiver of the child. Both mom and dad were not doing well at the beginning of the other case plan, but that has since changed. The dad has been aggressively pursuing his case plan tasks, doing very well the last 6 to 9 months, maybe even a year. I got his case in September. He's had 3 case managers since he's been in this thing. The judge he has now is not the judge he had before, so he's had a lot of transition and turmoil there. But so he's doing well. Mom has completely verbally said, I will not be pursuing tasks for my case plan. I'm just not going to do it. Has an attorney on her side. Caregiver has an attorney as well on her side now, and just recently they have gone and filed a private TPR in family court alongside of this. So it's a weird situation where somebody has now
try to usurp the
system by hiring attorneys to go through family court to private TPR, mom and dad. Mom has signed this petition as well and said, I'm good for this. Termination of parental rights is what it is. So, and mom has agreed to it. Says, I agree with this petition of my rights being terminated, and also for the dad. So she's aggressively also pushing back against dad having anything to do with this kid. So now you have 2 court cases going side by side. He's pursuing his parental rights by doing everything the state has asked him to, and they're on his side. Like, this guy's doing it, he's pursuing it, and we see the fruit, the behavior change, the mindset change, all of it doing great, going above and beyond. But this side saying, like, no, I don't believe any of that, and I'm going to hire these guys to fight against what you're doing.
Doesn't the system still have authority over family court, because
they have a court order? They have a court order to be first to primary, but this is this doesn't happen often, and even the judge at the hearing just the other day was kind of like, I don't know where this is going to go, so we're going to put some stuff on the books here. He has to get a new court-appointed attorney because he has an attorney for this case for
sure,
welfare, but he needs a new court-appointed attorney because she won't do both of them pro bono. She's like, I will do this work pro bono, but I will not do another one pro bono. And she said that in court. And I was like, she outright said, I'm not doing that for free. And so just like, we'll find you another attorney. And so all that. So it's a wild situation that I've never seen of, and I've asked around, and it's not like it's a far and few between.
Attorneys that'll do it pro bono,
right? So it's a few and far between like situation, but it's also it shows me like our agencies care that you're doing it, like, and they fight, and they're fighting for him because he's doing it, and like, so, yeah, it's cool to see that there has been a kind of a shift to be like, man, he's actually fighting for his kid, where mom is kind of like, I see a way out of this. I'm not trying to put a shade on her, but it just kind of seems like an easy way to be like, I TPR, boom, and if my sister has a kid, I guess she can never want. So it's a weird situation.
Like when we were fostering our twins, now obviously we adopted them, but we would see other cases all the time, and we'd see the advocacy for like, hey, dad still didn't like, he hasn't shown up, and we've given him several opportunities to show up. We're gonna give him one more chance, and it's just like they'll pick up the phone, hello, I know there's court, but I'm kind of have a cold. It's like, your kid is on the line. So then they would be like, we'll give him one more opportunity, but then we're gonna default if you know. So like, I've seen the system try their best to like lend a hand.
Well, usually they lead with reunification as the goal, right? And everybody should be on board with that. But then situations like that arise, and it's like, okay, now it's going to be a concurrent goal, reunification or an adoption, you know? And it's really up to the father or the parent in the situation, in this case, to step it up, or be like, hey, I'm just going to keep on, playing my cards and doing what I want to do. You know what I'm saying?
And when Vijay's talking about the goal, what he's meaning is there's a ultimate goal.
Permanency
For the child. Like,
safety.
We have to, by law, get permanency for the child. What is that best position? So the system is designed to put that child in the best possible position. And so reunification is just a fancy way of saying, like, we want the child to be with his biological parents. And all the data shows...
The natural way that God designed everything is what we want first.
And all the data shows that that's the best place for the kid. And what I think is important for our audience to understand, because this is what I'm thinking that our audience is many of them may be thinking, is these guys sound like deadbeats. Like, why do we want them going back to this deadbeat dad or wasn't in their kid's life? Like, why do we want that? Let's get them in a good, loving home, and What would you guys say to that person?
Well, I would say I understand. Like, your first kickback is like, well, what's the point of that? Let's get them into a good, loving home where they need to be, where they're loved and they're taken care of. But like, from a gospel standpoint, that's a really bad way to look at it. It's unhealthy. Like, God has created us, like you said, to be in our biological family, and God is in the business of restoration. Like, he's been doing it for thousands of years. So it's kind of like, for me as a Christian person, like, the system actually shines light on what Jesus has done for us. Like, he's restored us to our Father. So what we are doing is kind of like, it's hand in hand with the gospel and the whole narrative of the Bible. It's like, this is what this system is for. It's what we're doing it for. And to say that we just push these guys to the side and say they're not worth it, they're not worthy of a second chance, sometimes a third or a fourth chance, right, is to say that you don't want the same chances for yourself. Like, it's so easy for us to be like, oh, he's a deadbeat dad, but what if his dad was a deadbeat dad and then his father was a deadbeat dad? Like, there's, like you were saying earlier, there's a generational curse sometimes that needs to be broken, and this dad might be the one who breaks the curse, but also, if he doesn't have anybody to support and advocate for him, he might not be able to do that because, like, it's hard. Like, we are and then there's guys who think like, I can't do it because I can't do it by myself. So it's like, it's hard because you have to give other people as much grace as you give yourself. Like, that's a big thing. It's like, it's easy to give yourself grace, hard to give other people grace. So to have the right mindset and the right way to think about it first is like, you got to check your heart, as some people say. Like, these guys are trash. Why would I do that? But it's like, be careful, So
the idea that we would, Jesus had said, yeah, of course it was Jesus. Wait, was it Jesus? It said the measure with which you forgive will be the measure that I forgive you.
Yeah, it's at the end of the it's at the end of the Matthew 6 of
the Beatitudes
of the prayer.
In Matthew 5-6. So I think that we bring a common misunderstanding to the table. For sure. And then I always want to say, they should be in a good family. You want to adopt them?
Yeah.
Where are you at, bro?
Because we need more of those.
I think that's part of the awareness piece of this podcast is to say, hey, what can you do? And maybe you just can pray, and that would be amazing if you can pray. But maybe you are called to adopt or foster, or maybe you're called to do what a lot of the Man Up programming is, which is to just come alongside and disciple. It's being a coach, it's being a patros. It's just standing in a gap. In the time that we have left, I'd like for you guys both to discuss if you're not there, because there hasn't been a father advocate in the system. It's 80% women. Dudes come into it and they're like, man, there's a bunch of females around here. You get that and whatever. Tough. We are, and I've heard some of our constituents say, I don't know of anybody else other than Man Up doing this stuff. Like, there's nothing else out there for dads. Now, that's not to say there isn't stuff out there, but it is to say that it's rare enough that it's not really prevalent, and they don't know the resources. Right. If we're not there, what are the consequences? And so as you're speaking to even other states who would be considering something like this, take it one way. Either what are the benefits or what are the consequences if you're not there?
Mm-hmm. I don't think the dads will admit this, but they want to feel pursued. Mm-hmm. It's all about the pursuit, and that's it goes back to the father pursuing us, right? The prodigal son. The father was constantly pursuing, even though it was from a distance. He had to let his son make his mistakes and go through, his own journey, right? To get back to God, right? To get back to his father, even though he took all of his inheritance, right? So that's what I look back on, and for me, just even it touches home with me, just being adopted. Like, we want to see a father for every child. So if it doesn't work out for the father, I'm not going to continue to advocate that to push him towards reunification when we know it's not the best choice. But we could still be there for him, and then push them towards adoption. Hey, we could still make this work for you and for this family, but ultimately for this child, right? So I think the pursuit is so heavy because they already feel like nobody cares about them. And it just goes back to that. It goes back to them you do matter. You have a reason of being on this earth. Like, your purpose is not over until you breathe your last breath. Yeah. Right? That's the way that I look at it. Yeah. So that pursuit is heavy for me.
Do you find that allows more successful outcomes? Like, in other words, your pursuit of the dad, when that happens, is the dad more likely to actually follow through with this case plan? Is he more likely to get engaged? Is he more likely to spend more time with his kids? Have you seen that? Absolutely.
I think everything goes up. His morale goes up. His motivation goes up. His work ethic goes up because now he has something that's bigger than himself. That's good. And again, it goes back to breaking those cycles. Who's going to do it? If it starts with us, it has to end with us, right? So it goes hand in hand. It has to complement each other. So I believe that's the best route to go. Like, these men, they want to feel that camaraderie, and they get that with the gatherings that we do, the meetings that we do, whether it's one-on-one or whether it's the group affinity events. They see that other men are going through this, and you see the head nods. Yeah. You see the tears come out, and then they have a healthy place to be able to vent, to be able to articulate what they're truly going through. And these other men can then speak into that, speak life into that, and they might not even be believers. Yeah. But that's the gospel that's really happening in that room, in these interactions.
Yeah, because it's not just one-on-one mentorship or coaching that you're providing. We're then getting these guys together with peer on peer. And we know that as men, I shared this, I don't know if it was a staff meeting or what, but the modern man is looked at as you need to be the hero walking away from the explosion by yourself. Yeah. And that's you just conquered the world and you're on your own, and that's just how it's going to be. And we all know that doesn't work like that. No. We need to be in relationship. We seek and crave, to your point about being pursued, to know that somebody wants us. So it's not just a one-on-one, it is the peer. It's getting them together and them realizing, wait a second, I'm not alone in this. There are other guys going through that. And the benefit of being in a local body of Christians is you're with those believers. That's part of the benefit is, I saw Joe at church the other day, and I asked him how he's doing, and he's like, you know what, I'm kind of struggling right now. And we got to talk, or you've got small groups of men meeting and whatever. So but a lot of these guys, so many of them are just isolated. And so we're providing community in some respects that has never been there before. So
yeah, and I think that's a huge one, is the isolation piece. Like if it wasn't for Man Up and the work that we're doing in the fatherhood engagement side of it, like they miss a huge piece of just the camaraderie and the brotherhood and the whole fact. I was just thinking, like, when you were talking about it, like even when you watch a Marvel movie, you see every individual guy can handle themselves, right? But when but there's always something that comes along, like a Thanos or something bigger, that I can't do it by myself. This is bigger than me. And the only way to do it is to bond around other people who are fighting the same battle, and then you all take it down together. And it's like you win the battle because you were able to bond together and fight together, knowing that this is bigger than me. And so thinking about, like, without that brotherhood and that bond, like, you can win the fight, but it's going to take a lot more of of you pulling up your bootstraps, quote unquote, and finding the motivation intrinsically to do it. And most people just aren't wired that way. And unfortunately, like, for us, it's like it's the camaraderie and the brotherhood and the fight to pursue dads, to break them out of isolation and say, I'm here for you. I'll fight with you. And I'll support you in this. And, like, there's also a lot of things that we do with help from our grants and other things that other organizations are not able to do and can't help with. Housing assistance, rental assistance, bills assistance. Like, there's some times where these men are doing all that they can and they just fall short. And all they need is not continued support for their entire life, but hey, if I can get you through this season, can we find a way to get you through this 3 to 4 months, get you to a place, and maybe even get you in a new career or a new path to make your life not easier, but just more bearable? Like, can we do something like that to push you and say, hey, I believe in you, and I think I can get you to a 9-month trade school and put you on a path that changes your life? Because not only will I introduce you to Jesus, but I'll give you a pathway to success by just seeing that you can accomplish something.
Wow.
So I think that's a big thing.
That's a really great point. And I hope people are hearing this, because on the one hand, we seem to value this idea of self-sufficiency, and then yet self-sufficiency is the demon that takes us down too, because it's this lie that says nobody else is out here to help you. Yeah. You better figure it out. You got yourself in this mess, you're going to figure it out. Yeah. And then if we try and fail, then we go, well, what's the point? I'm not even going to try then. We don't tell people about that we're behind, so we miss one rent
so many times. It's like,
all right, well, I'll figure that out. I'm going to go work this job. I'm going to do this. And then it's like we pay the phone bill, but we don't pay the light bill. Then that's off, and it's like, dang. And then the next thing you know, then you rob Peter to pay Paul. So you got the rent covered, but now you got no water, you got no electricity, you've got no food on the table. And you're like, well, shoot, what's the point of me having a home if I don't have food on the table?
It's the myth of the hustle mindset.
Yeah,
and that's what it is.
Yeah, well, and it's funny too, because the fight to reunify is not even the beginning of the fight. Yeah. As soon as you reunify, life hits you hard. Yeah, and I'm helping, and I'm like a majority of the guys, for me right now, not even a majority, but there's a good number. Like, they love our program for when we're helping them to reunify, but then they dig in when they are reunified because they're like, I can't do this myself. And like 3 out of the 4 that I'm working with are single dads. Yeah. With some support, but like, man, I like one of the guys, I'm like, he was doing the same thing, working, doing all those things, but got his car repossessed. Yeah. Didn't tell me. We got to find out through somebody else. And I'm like, why didn't you say anything? He's like, well, I've been working against that for years. I'm like, you didn't say anything. And it's like, he was just kind of like, I didn't want to burden you with the help.
Yeah, you've done so much
we're
already.
We're here, but like, that's what we're, and it's like, so it's like,
which is a pride thing too.
It's a pride thing
that
too.
these men feel.
Yeah.
But it's also a shame thing. Like, I don't
shame.
I don't want to throw, like, you've done so much for me. I don't want to throw more on you.
Am I
more
less
people
of a
wanna-
man because I'm asking that much more too?
Yeah.
And more people
It
want to
could
come
be
back and
that,
help
or-
too.
yeah.
And there's dads, I'm like, man, you've done so much. What can I do for you? I'm like, as soon as I find something, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I promise. As soon as I find something, I'll tell you.
That's
Well,
Wow.
Yeah.
well, that's a common thing too. Like, hey, I'll pay you back. I'll pay
it's
you back.
like,
It's like,
Yeah.
no, we don't need you to
We
pay
need
you
to pay
back.
you
We just
back.
want you to step up for your family,
Yeah.
so that you could like go in that trajectory.
But
that
that's a
you're
good heart.
called.
Yeah.
to have,
It is.
right?
It
It
is.
shows you that
Yeah,
there-
yeah.
it shows
that there's
something.
like, I'm not, this isn't transactional for me. This isn't where I'm just getting something and I'm taking a handout.
Yeah.
But it's where I'm looking at you and saying, like, man to man,
I got you.
I got you
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
It's
You have
maturity.
me.
It's a relationship too.
Yeah.
So it's not a one-way relationship at that point.
That's good.
There's a lot to this. Yeah,
Wow.
there's a lot to it.
And I want people like that are listening to also understand, like, I don't care how much money you have. I don't care how healthy you are. I don't care how great your marriage is. You're one disaster away from being in that same position.
One
One
bad
moral
choice.
failure.
So
Everything.
to never have the pride, because when I was I used to work at We Buy Any Car,
Mm-hmm.
and I used to purchase cars from people, and you don't know how many people came across my desk that had it all,
Mm-hmm.
lost it all in a weekend or a week,
Mm-hmm.
and next thing you know, they're selling their car and trying
Figure it
to
out.
just scrap for money because they're in an emergency.
Mhm.
You know, so like, it's so easy to look at men that are in a hard situation that need 4 months of assistance so that they can go to trade school and they have a kid. You know, it's so easy to look at them and be like, man, well, why didn't you do that before you had a kid? That, like, you know, make better decisions or like pull yourself by your bootstrap, until you're the one that's in that seat.
Yeah, and you're like, bro, I'm trying to right now. Like, I need-
promise you, I'm trying.
Yeah.
But it's hard if you don't have the degree to then get that.
There's a point in everybody's life where like, man, I wish I could go back and change that.
Yeah.
And everybody has that. And It's
Yeah.
like, why are we penalizing someone because they found it out at 30
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
15
Or 50.
or 50?
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
Yeah.
no, like if God finally, like,
Yeah.
you allow God to open your eyes, or God opened your eyes, or
Yeah.
however you want to take
Yeah.
it. It's like once you are illumined to the fact of, I can't do this on my own, and you lay down your pride and you lay down your shame, because that's what Jesus does. He takes our shame.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing about the gospel. And, you know, I have people ask, like, will you take people of all faiths, or you only serve Christians? I'm like, no, we take anybody. Like, anybody who has any faith at all or no faith at all, we're going to take you. And we want to walk with you in this. Why?
Still gonna get
Because
Jesus.
you're going to get
You're gonna
Jesus.
hear
Point you to
Jesus.
there.
But
Yeah.
we
can
but we
come.
value you because
Yeah.
of your inherent worth and dignity. We don't
Yeah.
believe that you
Imago
have
Dei.
any value just because, you know, you're a Democrat or a Republican,
No.
or we don't like you because you're on the right team or you're on the wrong
Yeah,
team.
yeah.
Like, we value you because of something that is greater than yourself.
Yeah.
You know, it's what you said earlier about, like, believing in something that is not just me. And that's where all of us need to be.
Yeah.
Because once we are believing in something greater than ourselves, we will do things to the detriment of self
Yeah.
for the greater good.
Which
Yeah.
is the gospel.
And that's the gospel. It's what Jesus did for us, and it's what we do for others. And quite frankly, as men, it's what we do for our families. Like, I'm willing to take a back seat to my personal ambitions because I know that my family needs something, you know, more than I do. Like, I'm willing to not pay $2,100 per ticket to the Ohio State Notre Dame
was like,
National
where you
Championship
going?
game because I know that money could be spent better elsewhere, like feeding my family.
Better.
So if anybody wants to gift Jeff some tickets,
By the time this airs, hopefully the tickets will come. Bro, they did come down. They were 20, like right after we beat
2,100,
Texas. It was $2,100 for the back row of
Oh,
Georgia.
wow.
Standing room.
Back row.
oh, it's in
bro.
Georgia too, so it's actually kind of close.
No, I could get there. A flight to Atlanta is cheap too.
You already looked it up.
I got it all planned out. They're down to like 1,600 as the day of this recording.
okay, there you
So if they
they go
I
down
told my
any
wife,
more.
I go, babe, if they go down to 800, come
Come
on.
on.
I mean,
Come on.
She goes,
on.
you wouldn't let me go to Taylor Swift for 400. She's like, there's no way. I'm like,
So if it
we're
drops
bringing
to
Taylor
4,
Swift into this?
Taylor Swift's Kansas City.
too far away. Yeah, it's good.
Oh, well, thank you guys for answering a lot of those questions.
Yeah.
I feel like
appreciate
that
you
was
guys.
really insightful. And then thank you
No doubt.
for just listening in and joining us as we're diving into this topic of fatherhood, of the fatherhood bill, and what that's done for Florida, and hopefully does for other states
Yeah, that's
as
right.
we present all of
Amen.
these things to other states. So God bless y'all, and let's keep embracing healthy masculinity. We'll see you on the next one.